welcome to today's video. In the spirit of just starting, which is one of the key messages that I try and speak about and that I promote through creative play, I wanted to start doing some videos where I just talk you through some different found objects that I come across and how I use them to kind of spark creativity in my work and in my life. And I hope that you'll be able to start looking at things differently, trying new things with your creative work, and just realizing that even the smallest actions are still forward movements. So this week particularly, I've been really low mood and finding things really difficult following some illness, and just really kind of trying to reconnect with the play and my creativity that I know helps really boost my mood and improve my mental health. So I wanted to just kind of share some of that today. I'm completely disorganized with this video, but as I said, just wanting to use that idea of just starting to really get going and to be able to share this video with you. So let's go. I'm going to put the camera overhead and we're going to just talk through a few different things that you can do with some found objects. And today we're going to be looking at some leaves. Okay, so yesterday I was at the park with my toddler, and we were doing some sort of searching and some scurrying, and we came across all these really beautiful leaves that we found. And I wanted to kind of show you just how I kind of use found objects as a way to sort of spark some creativity in my life. And one of the key things that I talk about in a lot of the programs that I do is this idea that we can just take these tiny little steps regularly in order to boost our creativity, help us to look differently at things, and just to get those ideas flowing. So we came across these leaves, and I mean, they are just spectacular. They have got such beautiful, beautiful colors in them. There's some like little, I don't even know what these are called, but little bits on the back that create this texture. We've got, you know, different shades in them, different shapes. And we just collected a few together, and I wanted to bring them back because straight away, this kind of gave me an idea of things that I could do with these. I really loved the idea that I could draw them, I could paint them, I could get a color palette from these, and using these leaves as just initially a way of inspiring a whole bunch of other play ideas for me. So the first one I want us to talk through is I'm just going to look at a way we can actually even very quickly just create even some interesting, an interesting pattern. So even just with a pencil, I'm just going to get a couple of these on the page like this, and actually I'm going to just turn the page around. No, I'll do it there. A couple of these on the page, and we're just going to actually really, and I'm not an illustrator, but really easily and freely, I'm going to use some ink. So I've just got an old jar here that I use, and some of this drawing ink, but you could literally use anything. You could use watercolor pencils, paper, watercolor paints, acrylic paints, whatever you want. So I'm just going to, for the sake of this, use a little bit of black ink, and I'm just actually, I've got a very old, just a watercolor brush there. It's nothing fancy. These are just old bits and pieces that I've got on my desk at the moment. I haven't prepped anything, just to show you how quickly you can just get into play. And this is just a piece of white A3 photocopy paper. So I'm going to just use my ink here, and just using the patterns here, the shapes here, I'm just going to really easily, I'm actually not even looking at the painting that I'm doing. I'm just sort of moving with this idea very freely, holding the brush, the pen, sorry, at the end, just so I even get a lot kind of more freedom in my actions. So I'm going to just do this one now. And again, I'm not really looking at the thing I'm painting. I'm just sort of trying to replicate some shapes as I go, and you can see that I'm just getting some really interesting sort of shapes happening here. I might like to join that up. Again, this is just an activity in movement and in play. You know, we're looking to just create, I'm doing this one now, something that's interesting, and we're just playing with this idea of what could be. So I had no preparation for this today, and it's just something that I thought would be really nice to show you, and something I was hoping to maybe do in these videos is to just kind of show you little bits of how I build very quickly, play into lots of different moments of my day without too much sort of stress or angst, and how this one I did sort of look at, and you can hear my children in the background, you know, without too much stress or angst, just to kind of get some different things happening and to play with some different shapes and ideas. I'm just going to paint this one, and then I'm going to show you another kind of activity in that. So, you know, we can see quite quickly that we've just got some really interesting shapes. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we took some of this patterning that we've got and we actually kind of replicated that into these shapes, just to kind of see what we get. Now, we could do this in a number of different ways. Because the ink's still drying, I'm just going to try this one with using the same ink, and just I'm actually might try a different brush. I'm going to try a lighter, a thinner brush, but you could actually use anything you want for this. You could even use, to be honest, a stick. I'm just trying to see if I've got a stick. Okay, so I've just gone and found an old chopstick, a wooden chopstick, and just for the sake of showing that really you can use anything to make interesting marks and to kind of spark ideas, I'm just going to use this stick and holding it very much at the edge. I'm sort of just going to draw on top of this with some really interesting little marks that I'm sort of finding from the leaf. And you can see that because I'm using this stick, I'm getting some really nice textures. And I'm sort of just being in the moment here. I'm not trying too hard to achieve any great result. And again, this act of just kind of doing and not thinking too hard about the outcome of what's going to be. I'm just taking some time. Looking at the different shapes in there and what that looks like. I'm just going to grab another one now, just as inspiration to sort of see what's happening. This one I might grab. And I really encourage you to use different materials other than brushes, because it kind of helps you lose that sense of expected outcome and helps you sort of seek out a different alternative result, you know, a different result to what you might expect if you use a brush, because you might always think, oh, the brush is going to do this sort of look. But then actually, if you use something that you're not used to using, you get a very different result, and that can be really, really interesting and pleasing, and again, kind of spark new ideas. Nice and enjoyable to do this. I quite like those dots that this is giving, so I'm actually going to just look at doing something like that on this one without too much kind of concern, but just this idea of dotting in that space. So if you've seen some of my work before, you know that I've got this kind of exciting box of found things that I like to play with. So, you know, for the sake of doing this, we could use something found like this, and in actual fact, we can just use even one of the leaves. So let's see what happens if we just play with that in here. Do we get something even? It's very kind of relaxing. Oh, it's broken a bit off. I wonder what's going to happen here. But I sort of don't have any expectation of what might come of this because I've never used this leaf before. And sometimes just stepping into this play space really allows me to just kind of clear my head a bit of all the stuff that I carry every day, and I'm sure you do too. So you can see now I've sort of moved away from this idea of using the pattern, and I'm now just actually using the leaf and just that ink. You know, it's not many tools, just kind of experimenting with what happens. Now I'm just going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back and we can add in a little bit of colour and use the leaves again as a way of sort of playing with colour in there. So we've looked at the patterns and we've looked at the shapes and just sort of playing with that idea. But we could also really kind of look at the colours that these leaves, and this is the one I painted on before, but the colours that these leaves are kind of translating. And I've never been one for hugely swatching, but it might be a really nice kind of experiment to play with, you know, mixing these colours and seeing what kind of goes together. And that in itself is just a really kind of simple play activity that can get you going to think about, you know, what colours might go together, what you could play with next. So I'm just going to kind of paint some, and these are just some beautiful watercolours that I've got, and this is not watercolour paper, so I'm just really sort of playing with this idea of finding, you know, some interesting colours in between that, you know, looking at the leaves to find these colours. And, you know, even so much as it's got this quite, you know, these little pockets of green and yellow in amongst. So, I mean, how nice is that, that you kind of can just pick up on these tiny little details, and maybe even just that, you know, that little bit of brown as well that kind of comes through. And it's not a lot, but you can kind of create, you know, these sort of visual stories that call from these beautiful colours that the leaves are presenting to us. And this is sort of an activity that, again, is very, very mindful. It's very calming, and it's, you know, you're just being playful with what that's sort of presenting to you and how that kind of comes together. So, you know, you don't actually have to make it look like a leaf. It's just this idea of, you know, these tiny pockets of green coming through. And that in itself, so just a side note, and this is what happens when I start to play, is, oh, that is quite interesting. I wonder what would happen if I brought that out into something maybe a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to get a pencil. Oh, that's a red pencil. I'm just going to get a pencil and just show you, you know, if I was to now kind of mock up a little bit of an image here, you see that? You know, how could I use this idea in terms of a composition? You know, maybe do I have a big kind of color here, and then this sort of tiny green here and a tiny green down here, and then, you know, some more color that's sort of coming here. And then, you know, we can actually play with this sort of composition with this idea of, oh, tiny little bits of green in here. And then what do we fill this spaces with? You know, is it this kind of golden orangey color that is predominantly taking up? And again, you're just playing with these ideas. It's not about making, you know, detailed fine art. We're using this time to just be in the moment, be with the work that we're playing with these colors, with this nature, and just kind of experimenting with what's possible without kind of putting too much pressure on ourselves. Now, if this was watercolor paper, I'd be getting some sort of better tonal. But, you know, I'm really conscious of not making this seem out of reach, because you don't need much to be able to just start experimenting with creative play. So it's very big for me I make sure that it's not all about, you know, having the finest and the best. Just driving me, you know, I'm just thinking I really want blue in here. So, you know, that's just coming from nowhere. I'm just pulling that in because that's what was sort of drawing me at the time, to bring some of that blue in there, you know, from one to the next. So this idea came, and then the next idea came, and, you know, if I just was to quickly kind of blacken off this, I don't know if it's going to work. No. I will just use the ink again. You know, I could easily just now paint off the edges of this. We've sort of just kind of got to somewhere from just starting with those found leaves. And this idea of kind of, you know, using something found in order to create something brand new. And that's how we can experiment with play and utilize play in a way that, you know, creates a whole lot of different results. Now, we could go on and do any number of things. You could use this leaf to stamp. You could, you know, create a repeat pattern using some of these designs. You could use this to make, you know, a letter form. You could break it up and make, put it in water and make a paint with it. You could literally do so many things just with these found leaves. You could make a necklace. You could push them into clay. You know, the sky's the limit on what you could do using just this one particular found object and using that as the basis for play. So once these other ones dry, I'm going to just use some of the same colors and bring that in, and just so we can see what that looks like. Okay, so I actually have decided that after watching these ones dry, I want to use those, and I'm going to create a repeat pattern using them. That's the next idea I want to do with that. So this is part of the play journey for me, is that my ideas will change as I'm working through, and that's what's so exciting about it. So I'm going to come back once I've created that pattern, and I'll show you how that all looks. And then we can kind of go over again what we've done with just these simple found beautiful leaves, and how we've used those today to be able to spark a whole bunch of different ideas around that we can play with creatively. Thank you very much for joining me on this video. It's been such a pleasure to share this little moment with you, and I do hope to be able to do a lot more of these in the full spirit of YouTube. Please like and subscribe so that you can know about when more of these videos come up, and please share a comment below if this has been helpful for you, and any other details I'll have down there of ways we can connect. So thank you so much for being here today, and good luck and enjoy your play. See you soon.